to accept the answer before even knowing the question. That is what religious belief is. Nuri Shabaka, Ursa Ma'adra. Knowledge is infinite, therefore evolution is inevitable. Peace.
Hotel family, it's your brother Piankhi Ptah Mutulu Nefer Amun Rod, aka Nkosi Yamakosi. And today I have a powerful presentation for you. It's called the Modern Kemetic Journey, presented by Paradigm Shift TV 314 and Makaru TV 314. The reason for this presentation is because I find it necessary to break down our Kemetic path in the modern context. Lately, I've been having some conversation with some so-called Christian apologists, and they tend to bring up negative aspects of ancient Kemetic behaviors by those ancestors, as if it would pertain or connect to us in our modern paradigm, which to me would be tantamount to me bringing up when Christians burn people at the stake, when they hunted down so-called witches, put them on trial, and killed them. And that was much closer to our modern times than this 3,000-year civilization that went unabated until foreign influence became too much for them to come back from. But when you're talking to a so-called Christian apologist, you always have to remember that they are coming from a Eurocentric, Middle Eastern spiritual tradition that is not African, no matter how it was superimposed over Africa. It is not African. It is a literal tradition. And they could never understand sacred or divine symbolism if they wanted to save their life, because they are totally ensconced in that tradition. You can understand it and you can have these conversations and you know it'll go nowhere. The only thing you can do is defend and explain your position and listen to them defend and explain their tradition. They believe in the literal sky daddy, while we extrapolate what we can from this African spiritual ideology and apply it to today so that we can move forward in power. With that said, let's get into this presentation. Uncle Jocelyn to my grandmaster teacher, the Honorable Amari M. Seneferu, Baba Seba of the Kemetic spiritual tradition, Pan-African Garveyite and founder and leader of the Temple of Het Haru, a man who is always Makaru. Salute. Uncle Jocelyn as well to Queen Mother Ini Teray, Aset Akua Kitty Haru, Seba of Inspiration, Kimran Nasu, Sheikh Ma'at of the Temple of Het Haru, as well as Elder Rennie Unk Makaru, and Elder Regina Dennis Nana, and the rest of the Temple of Het Haru family, including my brother Metu Hotep Jallo, or as I call him, Metu the God. Hotep family. A word from a grand master teacher. We must always recognize and respect the fact that our culture cultivates in us our own special way of being human in the world, and that this particular African way of being human in the world provides a pathway to the universal. That's from the great Maulana Karenga. Salute to that grandmaster teacher. In our introduction, let me say, M. Hotel, peace be with you. We are because the ancestors were, thus I am because you are. Many believe Kemeticism is a religion practiced in ancient Kemet. And even though ancient Kemetic spiritual mythology is one thing in its own right, there are many variations of that one thing. For example, given the ruling dynasty in Kemet at the time, the main focus of the mythology would change. Once foreign invaders like the Persians and the Ptolemaic Greeks took over the land, the mythology was never again viewed in this African context. At least that was the thought process of those who researched Kemet's great history. However, the spiritual tradition was preserved as indigenous people migrated out of Kemet to the south in Nubia and to Central and West Africa, especially during the reign of Ptolemy I. Still until fairly recently, after much study and consideration from many scholars of the language, text, and history of Kemet, have we began to understand what the ancient people of Kemet believed. Neo. Let's define what neo means. Definition 1, new. Definition 2, a new or revived form of. Now, this is interesting because, again, you have so-called Christian apologists who bring up practices that happened in ancient Kemet as if we aren't sophisticated enough in our thinking to not follow negative aspects of ancient Kemet and simply extrapolate the positive aspects. Just like they do with their tradition. Or are they so unsophisticated in their thinking that they believe everything about their tradition is positive? Like stoning women who aren't virgins, which is in their book. Was that positive? Don't tell me that Jesus changed it because that was a woman who was in adultery. Didn't say anything about the woman who was a virgin. So the woman who was caught in adultery potentially can still, she was saved. But the woman who's a virgin potentially can still get stoned because it wasn't addressed. I'm sure they say, well, if he did it for the woman in adultery, he'd do it for the woman who's a virgin. But how do you know if it wasn't in there? But you don't worry about it because you don't affirm stoning a woman who's not a virgin. Just like we don't affirm servants being killed when their master died or forced suicide when their master died, which is something that these so-called Christian apologists bring up as if it's supposed to affect us in our Kemetic journey. It's amusing, but ineffective. But again, neo, new, or a new or revived form of. Let's go. To be Kemetic, or as I see it, neo-Kemetic, is to understand self and oneness, and to embrace the source of our origins and life force. Being a Kemetic student or practitioner is to seek personal evolution by personal journey using personal truth. And in my truth, I seek to change my thinking by using terms and concepts from the Kemetic culture, experience, and journey I am undertaking. Let that sink in. Let's move on. The Neter. The Black African people of ancient Kemet believed there was only one being in existence, and that being encompassed all of creation in its many aspects, called the Neter, or Inter, the all who are the one. They honored the Neter. Neter is another way to say nature. The Neter is made up of divinities or principles that describe the attributes of nature. So for every goddess or god mentioned in the study of Kemet, it reflects on something naturally occurring in the world around them. While some want to make it complicated, it's really that simple. Who doesn't believe in nature and the naturally occurring events thereof? And by believe in, I mean acknowledge that they're real and exist. Let's move on. Why we call ourselves Kemetic today? I assert that we are Kemetic and that we aren't doing what our ancient counterparts did. We're doing something new. It's a new interpretation. It's a new or revived form of what they established. So here's the truth. To be Kemetic is a truth seeker's practice, not a religion. Religions are organizations of leaders and followers. Seekers are individuals on a unique journey. That doesn't mean an organization can't be built with Kemetic principles. There are powerful organizations built with Kemetic concepts. That said, one's Kemetic journey is their own. For example, one individual may seek spiritual enlightenment in their Kemetic journey. They may view the divine in a literal sense. Communication with the ancestors and a literal ancestral realm are all a part of their paradigm and thought process. While another person seeks to extract knowledge from Kemet's history and to apply lessons from its mythic concepts that can be applied to everyday life with no literal spiritual invocation whatsoever. It's funny because I was talking to a Christian brother, and I believe the brother to be a powerful individual when it comes to the knowledge, passion, and fervor with which he defends what he believes. And he kept speaking about getting my foundation centered as if he was qualified to tell me what my foundation is. And it was amusing because how could you even fathom or conceive in your mind your literal mind to tell me what my foundation is or should be. Because if I'm on a Kemetic journey, an African journey, there are many paths that I can take at the same time, foundationally. But that's hard for a literal Abrahamic faith based individual to fathom. And I understand and empathize with someone being stuck in that state. Let's go. Religion as defined by Seba, Piankhi Ptah Mutulu Nefer Amun. This is my definition, no one else's. My definition of religion is any spiritual tradition that binds its practitioners to a book. Moreover, it's one that, when practiced, places unreasonable expectations on its practitioners, which in turn affects their self-esteem, self-awareness, and most importantly, their self-love. How can one love themselves in their best if their best is no better than a filthy rag? And if one isn't even worthy of self-love, it would be impossible to love anyone else fully. That's not African. Thus, that's not for Africans. There you have this. Religion, the practice of training your mind to ignore evidence, logic, and reason while being able to believe in fairy tales based on faith alone and being proud of it rather than ashamed. And I see this in these conversations with so-called Christian apologists. And again, with all due respect to what their perspective is, you're focused on what you believe is an illogical belief in this African-based spiritual concept, while you're defending with all your might a spiritual tradition where donkeys and snakes talk, literally talk. It's not symbolism as it is in these African concepts. And you could talk about what you think the ancestors in ancient Kemet believed all you want to, but we're talking about what we believe in the modern paradigm. Because you can't say you don't believe that the snake literally talked, because you do. You definitely believe that donkey talked. But let's continue. Replacing religion with spirituality. The reason why Kemeticism is so relevant today is that the practice gives the Black African truth seeker a pathway to leave religion and to focus on aspects that are real and evident and not taught in belief systems not our own. Black African people who are stuck in a God delusion and remain in a metaphorical unconscious state. As a result, they find this difficult to ascertain what I was just talking about. Kemeticism is a life path that many new African conscious organizations have attempted to move to, but yet find themselves in another form of religion, not because of neo-Kemeticism, but because of old religious habits they brought to Kemeticism, i.e., praise Neter or bless Neter in place of praise or bless God, or remixing gospel songs to fit neo-Kemeticism. I'm looking at you, Ray Higgins. But Kemeticism is older than religion. In fact, it's widely taught that most major theologies were influenced in one way or another by Kemetic spirituality. So why bring religion into our new paradigm? I say leave it behind and reestablish ancient Kemetic practices. Let religion go. Let's move on. Student and practitioners. I often get questions about the difference between someone who studies Kemet science and someone who is a practitioner of Kemetic spirituality. In essence, from my perspective, Kemeticism is Kemetic science and Kemetic spirituality redefined for our modern paradigm. The students and practitioners of Neo-Kemeticism differ slightly in their purpose, but both paths are beneficial in the elevation of the re-Africanized mindset. The practitioner is most often concerned with the ascension of the spirit. The practitioner fully dedicates their daily existence to Kemeticism through the study of the spiritual text, exercise of the mind, body, and spirit. They are actively looking to reignite the culture and lifestyle of our Kemetic ancestors, or at least get as close as it get as close, or at least get as close to it as we can in this modern paradigm. Excuse me. Tools such as meditation, yoga, and alchemy can all be applied to their path. The purpose of students of Neo-Kemeticism is more or less the ascension of the mind and the evolution of knowledge. Tools such as historical text, spiritual text, linguistic studies, and research methodology can all be applied in this journey. One can be both a student and a practitioner, or either or, but it's about the path chosen by the individual. Either way, this new path to Kemetic enlightenment is theirs to travel. Let's move on. In closing, for the African, being Kemetic allows Black African people to choose a spiritual path or ideological path that works for them and helps them live their life in a positive way. Neo-Kemeticism is the modern practice or study of the spiritual tradition of ancient Kemet. I personally feel that the main focus of Kemeticism is to live your life in Ma'at, which is truth, justice, harmony, balance, order, reciprocity, and righteousness. These concepts can be used to liberate the minds of Black African people and in turn free them physically. Thus, the mental and physical chains of Eurocentric / Arab-centric worldviews are removed, and Black African people can truly move forward in Black African power. Hotel. And with that, family, I hope you got a clear picture of what it is to be Kemetic or Neo-Kemetic in this modern paradigm. I hope that it's clear that despite some of these references to what the ancient ancestors did as they were developing their civilization, as it's brought up in a negative context to try to deter you from this path or to critique you being on this path. I hope it's clear now that you can literally ignore that. Because again, this is a new or revived form of Kemeticism. I hope it was educational. I hope it was beneficial. I hope it was edifying. This is your brother, Piankhi Ptah Mutulu Nefer Amun, aka Nkosi Yamakosi, the King of Kings. And that is Paradigm Shift TV 314 and Makaru TV 314. Like, share, subscribe. We'll catch you again on the other side. That is peace.